Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. I am your host, Phoenix. To the elite members, thank you so much for your love and dedication to the channel and myself. I cannot thank you enough. To all of the newbies to the channel, I hope you enjoy what you're getting ready to listen to. And to show some love to the channel, select that subscribe button below and set your bell to all. That way you don't miss any uploads in the future. With all of that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm, and get ready for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled Phictive Euphoria. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad, and after that, there will be no more ads within this video. A storm's coming. I can tell on account of the dogs. It always starts with one of them. The sound of it calling up the shifting sky, calling us friends. They sound like all of the rest who no longer are. Among their cries and howls and chants, I think I hear my Aunt Mary and my neighbor Ray. He had this laugh that was like he was gargling mouthwash. I think he had cancer or, well, it doesn't matter. I can hear that laugh now, though. Out there in the gray dark of the coming night, I can hear it like I hear my Aunt May saying, "That damn dog's out. That damn dog's out." Over and over and over. I hear them all, and not just during the storms. I hear every night. I hear them gibber at each other as they hunt and scavenge. I hear them scream and laugh as they replicate and eat the smaller of pears. I hear the young taking in new voices. I hear the voices of billions. I wasn't here when they first began to speak and grow long. I was not me at all. I was machines with tubes and bags and monitors that beat. I was a name on a whiteboard. I was a blue light above a door until I came back to this place. No, I was not myself when Hallway succeeded in his trials and his German Shepherd Rocky began to speak. But in the time since I awoke in this place, I have learned enough. Victor Hallway was a scientist who specialized in genetic modification and crossbreeding. In 1971, he developed a special form of popcorn, which he then sold to the Hush Hush, to a man who would later become a household name for that very same kernel. After Hallway made his deal, he invested his money in technology, where he learned a hard deal and made a great deal more after investing in Apple and Microsoft. It was then, at the ripe age of 60, that Hallway had his first child, a boy named Kevin. Hallway devoted his life to the boy until one day, in 1988, Kevin was asphyxiated when he caught his head stuck in the banister stairs. Hallway found the child hanging from the fourth step, arms black at his sides, his head swollen and dark and bruised from the child thrashing as he tried to break free. After the funeral, Hallway became reclusive and locked himself away from the world. He began to study things that only the desperate and mad do. He gathered all he could on the occult. His studies led him to a book without title nor author. Upon acquiring it, Hallway made his first public appearance in 2 years. At the public announcement, he told the crowd of onlookers and reporters that he'd be opening an animal therapy clinic for those in grief, a place where Hallway claimed a revolutionary new training and therapy method could be implemented that could help those suffering loss find what he called the ultimate closure. He then introduced the company's official mascot, a 2-year-old German Shepherd named Rocky. When I found next was an interview with the first woman to go through Hallway's program, Jessica Lasbeck. "So tell me, what was the treatment like for you, Miss Stevens?" "Stevens, I know it will help millions of people like me." Mr. Hallway he's amazing. He has reconnected me with my dear Robert. So the treatment was successful? This secretive new train and therapy combo works? Stephen pets a Great Dane that sits next to her. Oh yes, it most certainly does. What does the therapy entail? We mustn't tell you that. No. This reporter had been urged by the editor of this publication that I am not to identify who the third party present at the interview was, as per the publication's agreement with its primary shareholder, Hallway Holdings International. Jessica Lasbeck, Colorado Times. 2 months after the interview, there was no need for the act. Enough people had drunk the Kool-Aid, and Miss Stevens had been right. Hallway helped millions. Within a year, the whole country was covered with dogs, and it all looked all right. Until Miss Stevens' beloved Great Dane went missing, and along with it, the voice of her long-departed Robert. They searched for it like it was a person. People were starting to think like they were. People, I mean. After all, they sounded like their dead loved ones. Who could blame them? I found articles that talked of search parties. Even found an old home tape, which I got to play on a portable crank and watch TV I hooked up to a VCR and a broken cracked panel. In the footage, you can see the search and rescue officers scouring the Colorado hills around Mrs. Stevens' home. Ahead of some of the officers are unleashed German shepherds. They shout out along with the officers, except their tones sound some playful, like it's all a game to them. Rocky, come here, boy. Rocky, Mommy wants you. The officers in the footage didn't seem to respond to this. When I saw it, it made me think of EVP, how you can sometimes only see the dead or hear them through video. The search went on for 3 days, and then it was ended. 2 weeks later, officers were called to investigate a disturbance at Griffith Chambers High School in Colorado Springs. This news report was filed locally but uploaded online, where it made the rounds and was covered in tabloids along with stories of two-headed babies and UFOs attacking military bases in Kuwait. The two responding officers were Lowell and Witzer, as reported by one Robert Garcia of the Up to Date Journal. When the officers got to the high school, they were greeted by 2 teenage boys who looked startled. That's the word Garcia chose, not me. The boys told Lowell that they had been lighting off fireworks in the ballpark behind the school when something had come out of the tree line beyond the fence that surrounded the outfield. One boy said the thing looked like a moose. The other said it was a giraffe. Lowell asked the boys some more questions and ran them through a field sobriety test, while Witzer investigated the field. The boys passed the test, which surprised Lowell. The officer told the boys to head straight home, and then he readied for Witzer. When Witzer didn't respond, Lowell reported the situation to dispatch, who sent additional units. Lowell was going to wait for their arrival until investigating the field, but he heard what he thought was an old man calling for help from behind the school. Lowell got an ETA on the additional units and headed around the school to the ball field. The next parts of the report were very scant on detail, but Lowell said that when he got to the field, he found half of Witzer in the outfield. He called in an officer down, and when he looked into the tree line, he saw the rest of Witzer scattering among the limbs of the trees beyond the field. Then the officer saw a moving flash of white among the trees and heard the voice of an old man, a voice Lowell didn't recognize, but Miss Stevens would have known it. If she had been out in that field with Lowell and with Witzer, scattered all over the grass and strewn among the trees, She would have run out into those woods and out to that flash of moving white, out to her dear Robert. No one believed what little came about the incident at the high school. Lowell resigned a month after, and then, in the beginning of the following year, Lowell himself went through the program, coming out of it with a Dalmatian that spoke with the voice of the departed Witzer. But Robert had crossed the threshold, I believe. He had taken a life of his own, and a thing that is once dead cannot take what it has already paid, just as the living cannot take back what has been owed. And so, more began to disappear out to the wild places, to the mountains and forests and deserts of the country. Those that stayed with their human partners began to change. They began to talk in their voices. Then they began to grow long. It was around this time that Hallway finally began to get some backlash. It was also around this time that Hallway himself died. And with his death, the last domino finally fell. When the complaints began to come in about the therapy animals supplied by Hallway, there was no one to hear them. No one had seen Hallway since the disappearance of Mrs. Stevens' beloved Great Dane. But the news would interview gardeners and landscapers who said they would see movement in the dark mansion in the West Wing. One man said, "It's like there's a bunch of birds in there flying around. They fill up all the windows." Only it wasn't birds. It was Rocky, and he had grown. He had become long. Hallway would count Rocky's ribs every night as he would walk through the empty West Wing, surrounded by the coiled, shedding mass of it. The Rocky thing would talk to him in the voice of his dead son, sing to him, just like Kevin would do when he played in the backyard. "I love you, sunshine, you are my sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." This happened every night, until one night, Hallway, counting 399. That's when Rocky said, "It's time, Pop-Pop." Then, the old man slowly made his way through the room to the thing's mouth. Its head had also grown along with the rest of it, and now Rocky's eyes were the size of bowling balls. The massive thing opened its mouth, and the old man crawled inside. Hallway said, "Make it fast, sir. I've done all you ask." Then, in a voice that wasn't Kevin Hallway's at all, the Rocky thing said, "Not yet." With that, the massive German Shepherd slowly closed its mouth as Hallway screamed. After Hallway, they all became like Rocky. I am alone in this world of these things. I survived due to luck or horrible misfortune. I do not wish to die by one of those things, but I do know one thing that has helped me survive. I make no sound. Ever since coming back to the world and to this place, I have not been able to speak or even scream. When I first saw one of these things, I tried, and if I had succeeded, I know I wouldn't be here to write this. No, I am mute. I can only figure that when I was not myself. I was so close to the other side, that part of me got left there, like a lost shoe. And in these moments before the storms, when all of them are making their racket, I sit here and I wonder if one of them is screaming to the sky with my voice. I have the power to know everything. Most of you would call it a power, or an ability, or a gift. I'd call it a curse. I am not a god. I'm quite the opposite, actually. If you had a crowd of 50 people, you wouldn't be able to tell me apart from all the others. I'm pretty sure I've had this this ability my entire life. I only started to realize what it actually was when I was 13 years old, give or take a year. I was nearly on the verge of tears midway through my biology exam. I remember the question clearly. What was the name of the fine hairs that bacteria used to propel themselves? I was a stupid kid. I remember my head heating up like a microwave as I struggled to reel in the answer from the depths of study sessions and all-nighters. I forced myself to calm down and ask myself the question, what was the name of the fine hairs that bacteria use to propel their significant little bodies? I thought. Flagella. I just froze. I didn't think that. That was not my inner voice that just spoke to me. It was feminine in a way. It spoke each word coldly and clipped, like you'd imagine a Wikipedia page would read. I slowly scrolled down the answer on the page. Next question. I read the bold text as I shifted the pencil down. My arm felt as dense as steel. Name the substance which makes up the cell wall of a bacterium. Peptidoglycan, commonly known as marine, said the voice. The knowledge trickled through my neurons like a glass of ice-cold water. I aced the exam. Ever since then, that voice had been my guardian angel, guiding me through golden report cards, scholarships, and university opportunities. Of course, I had to play it down a little, slip up here and there. I remembered telling 3 of my closest friends about my ability. At first, they didn't believe me. Then they slowly started to accept my story, but they were still skeptical. I could tell when they believed me because they started to hate me. They would go out of their way to make my days hell. I moved cities and so moved schools. I never saw them again. A few years later, when I'd begun university, I learned that 2 of them had dropped out, having no will to commit to their education, knowing that I was always holding the get-out-of-jail-free card. The 3rd had lost the will to live and had hung himself in his bedroom. This didn't affect me. The fact that I had ruined 3 lives indirectly with my ability failed to get me to slow down. I pushed it to the back of my mind and carried on with my successful university career. Back then, I realized how far I could go, and I had no intention of stopping. Sometimes I try to ask it questions, different questions. Are you sentient? Can you make casual conversation? Not great pickup lines, I know. It didn't respond to those questions. I was left with the blank void of my brain. It did the same thing when I tried to ask it what could possibly be considered impossible questions, like, what's the nature of the university? Or why does it exist? Is there a God? I soon came to realize that it wasn't a person. It was just a tool, like a database. I was a bit disappointed. Everyone else was just, well, so vastly inferior to me. That made it hard to make friends. Of course, there was nothing wrong with me. After I left university, I kind of just drifted around. It occurred to me that I could really become anything, an engineer, a scientist, whatever. Even professions that required effort were feasible. All I had to do was ask for the best route, and I was set in stone. I was faced with practically infinity choices, and I didn't know which one to choose. So I took a break, went back to my roots, rented a small apartment, and got a job at a local Starbucks to pay the bills. You know, take a step back and look at the big picture, right? 10 days ago, I nearly lost my life. I didn't look both ways. That day, I learned that omniscience didn't necessarily mean invincibility. It humbled me a little, the trip to the ICU. I didn't break any limbs, luckily, only a few fractured ribs and bruising. 3 days later, I was out, the bill paid by my parents. Don't worry about them, they're nothing important. Back at home, relaxing on my recliner, I began to wonder, could my gift predict the future? Maybe it could. It could save me the trouble of breaking a couple of bones, maybe even help me avoid death. Or hey, maybe I could make a fortune off of gambling. When will I die? I asked. I waited. 5 seconds passed. 10. I sighed. Dud question. It probably couldn't predict the future then. 7 days. I started shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't stop. I kept on mumbling beneath my breath. What the hell? What the hell? I think I had a mental breakdown. I don't remember. All I do remember is a black nothingness, interspersed with episodes of crying, falling to the ground, hyperventilating. Eventually, I just drifted off and woke up the next morning. I had slept for 15 hours. There were only 6 days left until I died. Walking to work, I calmed myself down, closed my eyes, and asked a question. How will I die? Waited a minute. Nothing. I tried another approach. Who would kill me? 5 minutes. Nothing. I grew desperate. What is the name of the fine hairs bacteria use to propel themselves? I waited 10 minutes. 10 minutes gave way to 30 minutes. 30 minutes turned into an hour. I was reduced to tears again. I sat on the curb, tears flowing down my face. People passed by. Some looked at me with contempt on their faces. Some flashed me looks of sympathy. I looked like a homeless man, and that was probably what I would be. I'd built my life around my ability, and some part of my mind broke that night, knowing that I was about to die. And now it was gone, and everything went down the drain with it. I never studied. I barely knew what I was jotting down on those papers. A glimmer of hope cut through the gloom. No, I still had a life. I could keep my job at Starbucks and work my way up. I could still lead a humble life. I picked myself up and forced myself to walk to work. At work, I apologized to my boss for arriving more than an hour late. I started my shift with the other coworkers. I'd come to know. It all fell apart within the hour. I was paranoid, with reason. They were out to kill me, all of them. I caught Caleb sizing me up through the corner of his eyes. Cassandra always passed behind me on her way to the coffee machines. All of the customers I tried to serve stared straight at my heart. I was going to die here. On my 5th customer, I decided to make a break for it. There was no way through the entrance. There were too many of them. They would swarm me. I would die. I had to find another way. I made a break for the employees' only section, grabbing a fork on the way to the door. Caleb grabbed me. What's wrong? The fork was in my hand. Then it was inch deep in his jugular. I was running before he hit the ground. I ran from the screams. They were after me now. I burst through the back entrance and kept running. I could hear the police sirens, wailing like banshees. I would not die. I could not die now. That was 6 days ago. With the little money I had, I dyed my hair blonde, bought new clothes, and rented the cheapest apartment I could find. I can't go outside now. They're all after me, like a pack of bloodhounds. I won't die by their rules. I know that some of you aren't like them. You don't want to kill me. Not everyone wants to kill me. That would be insane, right? The rope is ready. Please, remember me. The doctors told me it was a miracle that I survived. They said it was a 1 in a million shot, a bullet that should have killed me instantly, but somehow left me clinging to life. I remember the flash of pain, the darkness swallowing me whole, and then nothing. When I woke up in the hospital, everything was different. I was blind. The hunting trip was supposed to be a weekend getaway with my friends, a chance to escape the monotony of daily life and enjoy the peace of the woods. We had been laughing, sharing old stories around the campfire, when I felt it. A sharp, searing pain exploded in my skull, and then everything went black. When I finally regained consciousness, my world was shrouded in darkness. The doctors explained that the bullet had damaged my optic nerves irreparably. I would never see again. At first, I was consumed by rage and despair. How could this happen to me? But soon, other sensations crept in, things that made my blood run cold. It started with the voices. At night, when the world was quiet, I could hear whispers, soft and distinct. They seemed to come from just beyond the edges of my perception, always slipping away when I tried to focus on them. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, a side effect of the trauma. But the voices grew louder and more consistent. "He's coming," they would say. "He sees you." I tried to ignore them, but the whispers followed me everywhere. During the day, I would feel cold fingers brushing against my skin, fleeting touches that sent shivers down my spine. My friends and family told me it was just my imagination, that I was adjusting to my new reality. But I knew better. Something was wrong. Something was watching me. One night, as I lay in bed, the whispers became screams. Terrifying, blood-curdling screams that filled my head, drowning out all other thoughts. I bolted upright, my heart pounding, and felt a presence in the room with me. It was cold, malevolent, and it pressed down on me, suffocating me with its darkness. I reached out, hoping to find something, anything, to reassure me that I was alone. My hands brushed against something cold and clammy, like rotting flesh. I recoiled in horror, but the presence only grew stronger. I could feel it breathing down my neck, its rancid breath hot against my skin. "Leave me alone," I screamed, thrashing wildly. My hand struck something solid, and I heard a low, guttural growl. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled out of bed, stumbling blindly through my room. I could hear it following me, its footsteps heavy and deliberate. I fled to the living room, collapsing on the floor in a heap. The whispers returned, softer this time, but more insidious. They wormed their way into my mind, planting seeds of doubt and fear. I was losing my grip on reality, and I knew it. Days turned into weeks, and the hauntings grew worse. The visions started next. Even in my blindness, I saw them. Dark, twisted shapes lurking in the corners of my mind. They would slither and writhe, their forms constantly shifting. Sometimes they had faces, ghastly, contorted faces with hollow eyes that stared into my soul. I stopped sleeping, too terrified to close my eyes. Every time I did, the visions would consume me, dragging me down into a pit of madness. My friends tried to help, but they couldn't understand. They couldn't see what I saw, hear what I heard. One night, as I sat in my living room, clutching a knife for protection, I heard the front door creak open. My heart raced, and I strained to listen. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, slow and deliberate. I knew it wasn't one of my friends. They had all but abandoned me, unable to deal with my growing paranoia. The footsteps stopped just outside the living room, and I could feel the presence watching me. It was the same malevolent force that haunted me since the accident, and it was getting bolder. I gripped the knife tighter, my knuckles turning white. "Who are you?" I shouted into the darkness. "What do you want from me?" The whispers answered, a chorus of sinister voices that filled my mind. "Your soul," they hissed. "We want your soul." I lashed out with the knife, swinging wildly at the air. I felt it connect with something solid, and a terrible, inhuman scream filled the room. The presence recoiled, but it didn't retreat. It was toying with me, enjoying my fear. Suddenly, I felt something cold and sharp press against my neck. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The whispers grew louder, more frenzied. They were chanting now, a dark, ritualistic incantation that made my skin crawl. "He's here," they said. "He's coming for you." I could feel the blade digging into my skin, drawing a thin line of blood. Panic surged through me, and I thrashed wildly, trying to break free. The presence held me down, its strength inhuman. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the pressure vanished. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The whispers faded, leaving me in a silence that was somehow more terrifying than the noise. I don't know how long I lay there, but eventually, I mustered the strength to crawl back to my bedroom. I locked the door behind me and huddled in the corner, clutching the knife to my chest. Sleep was impossible, but I closed my eyes, hoping for a moment of peace. Instead, the visions returned, more vivid and terrifying than ever. I saw a figure standing over me, its eyes glowing red in the darkness. It reached out, its fingers long and clawed, and touched my face. I could feel its cold, clammy skin against mine, and I screamed. When I opened my eyes, the figure was gone, but the fear remained. I knew it was only a matter of time before it came back, before it claimed me completely. I was trapped in a nightmare, and there was no escape. The next day, I called a priest. I was desperate, willing to try anything to rid myself of the darkness that had taken over my life. He arrived that afternoon, a kind older man with a gentle demeanor. He listened to my story without judgment, and then he began to pray. As he recited his prayers, I felt a strange sensation, a warmth spreading through my body, pushing back the cold. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, but I could feel their grip on me loosening. The priest sprinkled holy water around the room, and the darkness recoiled, hissing in anger. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The priest assured me that the presence was weakened, but he warned me that it was not gone. It would return, and when it did, I would need to be strong. That night, I slept for the first time in what felt like an eternity. My dreams were still haunted by the visions, but they were less intense, less real. I woke up feeling more rested than I had in months. But the reprieve was short-lived. The next night, The whispers returned, more sinister and malevolent than ever. The darkness was angry, vengeful. It wanted me to suffer, to pay for daring to defy it. I knew then that I couldn't fight this battle alone. I reached out to my friends, begging for their help. They were reluctant at first, but eventually they agreed. We devised a plan, a way to confront the darkness and banish it once and for all. We gathered in my living room, candles lit, the air heavy with tension. The priest joined us, his presence a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. He began to pray, his voice strong and unwavering. As the prayers filled the room, the whispers grew louder, more frantic. The darkness writhed and twisted, lashing out at us. We stood firm, refusing to back down. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a chill settled over us. The presence was back, stronger than before. I could feel it, a palpable, suffocating force that seemed to fill every corner of the room. The priest continued to pray, his voice rising above the chaos. The darkness fought back, and we held our ground. My friends clung to each other, their fear palpable. The whispers turned into screams, a cacophony of agony that made my ears ring. I felt a cold hand grip my shoulder, and I knew it was the presence, making its final stand. The priest's prayer grew louder, more urgent, but I could sense his doubt. The darkness fed off of it, growing stronger and more aggressive. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if claws were digging into my flesh. "He's here," the whispers hissed. "He wants you." The priest sprinkled more holy water, but it did nothing. The darkness laughed, a deep guttural sound that shook me to my core. I could feel its breath on my face, its rancid scent filling my nostrils. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the presence receded, leaving me gasping for air. The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I could hear my friends' ragged breaths, their fear mirroring my own. The priest's voice trembled as he spoke. "I have done all I can. The darkness is strong, and I fear it will not leave you." I felt a wave of despair wash over me. The priest had been my last hope, and now even he seemed powerless against the darkness. My friends left reluctantly, each one casting sympathetic, frightened glances my way. I was alone again, trapped in my perpetual night. The days blurred into each other, a continuous stream of torment. The whispers never ceased, their hissing voices a constant companion. The presence lingered, always at the edge of my awareness, a malevolent shadow that never left my side. I tried to go on with my life, but it was impossible. The darkness was always there, watching, waiting. It mocked me, tormented me with visions that felt all too real. I saw twisted faces, eyes burning with malice, reaching out to drag me into their abyss. I felt their cold fingers on my skin, heard their hollow laughter echoing in my mind. One night, as I sat in my living room, trying to drown out the whispers with the static of the television, I felt it again, a cold presence that seemed to fill the room. My heart pounded, and I gripped the arms of my chair, too terrified to move. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The whispers answered, a chorus of sinister voices. "Because you belong to us." I felt something cold and sharp brush against my cheek, and I flinched. The darkness laughed, a low rumbling sound that seemed to come from all around me. I could feel it closing in, suffocating me with its malevolence. Desperation clawed at me, and I realized I had to do something, anything, to end this nightmare. I remembered the priest's words, his warning that the darkness would return. But he had also said that I needed to be strong. Gathering every ounce of courage I had left, I stood up, my legs shaking. "You don't own me," I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I won't let you win." The darkness roared, a sound that shook the very foundations of my house. I felt a cold wind whip around me, and the whispers grew louder, more frenzied. But I stood my ground, refusing to give in to the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. "I banish you," I said, my voice growing stronger. "In the name of everything good and pure, I banish you." The darkness shrieked, a high-pitched wail that made my ears ring. I felt a pressure in my chest, as if something was trying to crush the life out of me. But I held on, repeating the words over and over. "I banish you. I banish you." The pressure grew, the darkness closing in around me. I could feel it trying to pull me under, to drag me into its abyss. But I fought back, refusing to give in. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The darkness receded, the whispers fading into nothingness. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, my body trembling with exhaustion. I lay there for what felt like hours, too weak to move. But gradually, I realized something had changed. The darkness was still there, lurking at the edges of my awareness. But its grip on me was weaker, its presence less oppressive. I knew that the battle was far from over. The darkness would never truly leave me. It would always be there, a shadow lurking in the corners of my mind, but I had faced it, and I had survived. As the days turned into weeks, I learned to live with the darkness. The whispers were still there, but they were quieter, less insistent. The visions still haunted my dreams, but they were less vivid, less real. I knew I could never escape the darkness completely. It was a part of me now, a scar that would never fully heal, but I had found a way to live with it, to keep it at bay. And so, I went on with my life, blind but not defeated. The darkness was my constant companion, a reminder of the horrors I had faced. But I had learned to live with it, to accept it as a part of my reality. I knew the darkness would never give up, that it would always be waiting for a moment of weakness. But I had faced my demons and survived, and that was enough for now. Picture this scene. The room is ultra dark. You're pressed against the sofa cushions by a strong man with his wet tongue stroking your neck. The sofa and cushions are not that soft, and your head is turned, stretched, even, facing just the right angle to stare out the window and into the neighbor's lit-up attic. It is so far away that you can't make out any of its expression. It becomes a game for you to make out what its face is telling you. But no matter how many times you get pinned against that sofa, you never figure out what it's trying to tell you. It's been 11 years. I'm now 21 years old, an outsider trans girl turned barista for a company that sells primarily to white cis mall babies. I have been planning to retake my rightful first steps into adulthood with my best and only childhood friend, Kyle. Yeah, he lives every bit up to his name, a hype beast who peaked during his high school football years and DJs for a trashy nightclub, who acts restlessly like he has been force-fed Monster Energy drinks since he was an infant, and really he's probably ADHD. His dad, Bob, loyally has promised to pick us up from the nightclub at midnight when Kyle's playtime is over, for our safety. Bob's a Bob, the same way Kyle's a Kyle, a man who could be anyone, so his friends, colleagues, and family had to nickname him Bob the Builder, which clarifies him. He works construction, and I guess people have always thought of him as a stereotypically kind and normal. My parents have heritage in the Middle East. They fight loudly and regularly, and they are not well liked around our block. Luckily, my younger and older siblings have turned out better people so far. So we automatically stick out, and since tonight is my first night going out, I've had to keep it a secret from them. I hang out with Kyle after my shift is ended, going to random local thrift stores. We're about to exit the most moldy-smelling one when a fat doll pops up out of nowhere. It looks like it has been sitting there, collecting dust for the past 11 years. I know it is the right one, the one from the attic, even though I was never able to read its expression. Its hair, clothes, and shape are too recognizable for it to be any other. Finally, seeing its expression up close feels like a sudden anticlimax. It had gone from hazy mystery to an average-looking vintage doll, staring right back at me. Without letting Kyle know why, I buy it. Perhaps I don't know the reason myself, why I feel like I should own it. Where would I even put it? I still live at my parents' house. We don't have time to go back to my place, so we head straight to the nightclub, where Kyle will be practicing since he's still new, and we have a couple of mutual friends there who co-own it. What the fuck is that? Is the question of the night, referring to the 3-pound heavy baby I'm carrying around awkwardly. Sorry, that's our new friend. I forgot to introduce you, I say. Who the fuck brings a doll to a nightclub anyway? Kyle is not happy about it, being my opposite in many ways. As straight and masculine as a hammer or spanner. When they start with the drinks, I am sober in the most epiphany kind of way. That is, I simultaneously care less and less about how I stick out and feel like I don't belong here. And I really am glad that I don't get hammered by alcohol the way that they do. My fat doll becomes attractive to their drunk minds. A genuinely amusing plaything that gets passed around in a circle, used mockingly as a Lolita and less offensively as a hostage to their strong and sour alcoholic breaths. I give in to their caricatured selves. The tension around my neck loosens up, and I too engage in their mockery and silly dancing. At some point, I forget to keep track of time and check my phone for new messages and notifications. People stream in like silverfish on a bathroom floor until the club is filled with people in slick and shiny clothes. The pumping loud music is making me feel dizzy, even though I've had nothing but free tap water all night. Kyle introduces me to a girlfriend of his I've never met. She's cool, goth, and her eyes pierce deep into my soul. As she pulls me onto the dance floor, leaving my doll in Kyle's lap, as he tells me that he has to go take a piss. I answer, well, bring the doll and just don't take a piss on it then, Kyle. And he smirks. The night is gone like that. Any frustration, any concern evaporates into the thin, oozing smoke penetrated by colorful laser beams, a hard pounding in my chest, a gleeful smile in front of me, and my matching rhythmic dance moves to those of a new friend. And then the screams, the kind that doesn't belong here. Guttural, panicked, someone just fucking died kind of screams. Reality hits me like a bowl of ice water. Groups of people push to the exit. I have no idea where the panic arose from, but I know I have to follow them outside. I push against them aggressively. Kyle's friend is gone. I throw my elbows to rush faster and make space. I check my phone. It is midnight. It is midnight. Where did I leave Kyle? Where did Kyle go? People exit in different directions, but I know where to go because Kyle's dad should have been here now. So I go to where we had arranged for him to pick us up. To the side of the club, a small parking lot lit by flickering streetlights. People are running away from there, leaving a body behind on the asphalt, with a man kneeling, screaming his name. Kyle, no, my son. No. I run to them, unaware of any danger or sensation other than that my heart is now in my throat. Electricity shoots bolt through my body. He's dead. He has no face. It's replaced by mossy red matter. They're soaked in a pool of blood. His dad doesn't even notice me. I am so sorry, I say, as if it's my fault that Kyle is the one who is dead. Bob still doesn't hear me. Other people come and try to pull him away from the body, and sirens ring discordantly. I go to the shadowed wall of the nightclub, throw up water, and turn around to see once again, just far enough out there in the distance, my doll lying with its face turned toward me, hollow in its expression, almost menacingly. I wish I could say my story ends there, alongside Kyle's, but it doesn't. 3 hooded men wearing masks were spotted running away from the crime scene after having beaten and kicked my best, and only, friend to death outside his workplace. No one got caught. No one got punished. It has been 6 years. I used to scoff at movies featuring creepy killer dolls because it's always felt like mine saved me, but now I believe it. This doll of mine was there with him, stained with a single drop of blood on its cheek, a testimony to what it witnessed. It was my fault, it said. And then I slowly walked past the small crowd taking care of the body and the body's father, and I picked it up from the ground and thought, this is my fault. I'm going to take that home with me. All the blame. I see it now. This is my fault. On the 6th anniversary of his death, I make a quick call to my parents and siblings to let them know that I care for them and appreciate them for having respectfully supported me and letting me live with them up until I got my own apartment, which was a month ago. I quit my low-pay job and I turn on the gas oven and open it, ready to put my head inside of it. I have thought about it a lot so that I don't mess it up. There is something so poetic about dying like Sylvia Plath, a woman whose soul was haunted despite the love she also received during her life. I am reminded then, in that moment, of the backstreet cat that has peered through my windows since the first night I moved in, which I reluctantly opened the window for and let into my apartment for a cup of almond milk. If I am to end what I have here to get a sense of peace, to bury the endless black noise that has occupied my brain since Kyle's death, I am not taking an innocent cat with me. So I go into the living room, blow out a candle, and close the window to the streets where a strong wind is whooshing. As I do it, I hear the sound of the door to the kitchen slamming behind me. The air cracks, and I hear a low rumbling as something erupts behind me. Tree and glass splinters and a wave of heat hit my back. I am knocked over. My head hits the ground with a loud thump. I wake up in the hospital to my dad sitting next to me. He is eating shawarma, probably from his place downtown, which makes the whole room smell strongly of homely spices. I feel nauseous, but mostly because I realize that my demise was not the one I had hoped for. How does one go about explaining what I had tried to do? Excuse it? There is no way to do that. Instead, I stare at the doll placed on the cupboard in front of me. Parts of its face are burned, but the body is very much intact and the same. "Oh," my dad says as he noticed the subject of my attention. "They did not manage to save much from the fire, but that. It's so ugly. They should have left it." It is an ugly doll for sure. The thing is haunted. Maybe it never saved me. Maybe it has been there at every bad moment of my life because it was the reason for them. It is the cause of bad things happening around it. I want to get rid of it, and I know I can't. If it could die, I know it would have died in that fire. You would think things could only go downhill from here. At the hospital after a failed suicide attempt, with basically no income, no place to live, having to move back into my parents, having to experience my family silently judging me at the peak of the aftershock. Yeah, I don't think so. I am spending the next few months facing my new realities, such as that due to the fire. Most of my back is scarred, including the backside of my head, where my long, beautiful hair will never be able to grow back. Some of my chin is scarred, my neck is scarred, and a lot of my arms and legs. I look like someone's nightmare, and I don't know how any wig or makeup could ever save this. I get rejected at every job interview, getting embarrassed and spooked looks from the interviewers and the people in the streets, even after having spent hours in front of the mirror trying to piece my skin and body back together into something recognizably human. The doll turned out better than you, I think. I guess that is when I decided to make a change. And instead of reversing my life into societal norms, I'm going to completely destroy any sign of them. I am tired of this body and this mind. There are only a few things I have been definitely good at anyway. And if I stay, I want to fulfill the revenge I sought out in the first place. My only, and depressing, regret is that I got the wrong person killed. Technically, the beating was only supposed to land Bob, Kyle's dad, in the hospital. I was too much of a coward to ask the small group of white druggies from the edge of our suburb to finish the deed after I paid cash. Naturally, I had saved up and withdrawn money from the bank ever since I started working my first job at 16. I just guessed they took it too far and got scared when they realized they jumped the wrong family member. Bob and Kyle do look somewhat alike, as fathers and sons typically do. I haven't heard or seen them since, and I don't care to, because I don't blame them. It is me who is responsible for looking out for Kyle. Me who hired them, knowing their history, and not at all caring if it would have turned out the same for Bob, splashed out on the street for all to see. Maybe I sound insane, but that is what he made me feel. Wrong and worthy of destruction for the reason of existing. For years, I would escape my parents' fights by going to Kyle's and finding comfort in how much more average-looking and ideal his home life appeared. We played games on his PlayStation. Kyle even got me to play baseball games with him. And we chatted about life. And everything cool and not cool, deep and not that deep. Kyle's parents were happily divorced, and since his mom was a career lady, Kyle naturally favored staying with his dad. I never saw Bob around much because he, too, would work pretty late. But when I came over at night, because of my parents, things started to change. He would never leave me and Kyle alone, out of sight, except to bring us ice cream from the fridge and soda. He seemed like a perfect dad, probably too perfect. And then one day, it was like he flipped the switch. His face grew more serious as he asked first Kyle, and then me, to undress. Kyle's face blushed with redness. I couldn't stand looking at him. He tried to ask his father if they could do it later, alone, privately. I both understood what was about to go down and had no clue what it meant. He didn't seem to force Kyle to do anything. Kyle appeared as if he went along with it, while I stood there frozen. "You too," Bob would say, sneeringly. Petrified, I removed my clothes like he told me to, and I felt myself distancing from my own body, which was wrapped in cold air and goosebumps. Sometimes he did both Kyle and me. Sometimes he did only me, made Kyle watch. I still couldn't stand looking at Kyle. So there, I stretched my neck, looking out of the window into the neighbor's house's attic across the street, at the doll that I now own. I don't know why I ever went back. If it was for Kyle's friendship, if it was for the desperate belief that everything else about his home life was perfect and better than mine. If it was because I felt that even though what Bob did to my body hurt and left me feeling dirty and shameful, I still somehow felt that it was so much better than the lack of control in my own house. Somehow the act of going back felt like I did have a sense of control, and that it was rewarded in the end with Kyle's lifelong friendship. Now, Kyle is dead because of me. I had arranged that night out where we would need to be picked up, made sure that it was Bob who would come to get us, and show the gang members who to go for, while I would be dancing the night away with Kyle. Obviously, I knew it would hurt him emotionally, but I trusted my gut that it was for the better because Kyle still lived at home, and I still saw the way he acted around his dad. Timid and uncomfortable when he got up close to him. I knew that it was right. But I messed up everything, and I have to do it over. I have found another strategy. Bob wasn't only interested in kids, he was also interested in hookers. Here I find myself unable to get past a job interview for a normal job, and I must go rogue. I tell my family that I am safe, but I am going to be away for a while. They try to hold me back, but they can't refuse because I am my own adult. It is depressingly easy to get into prostitution today. One contact becomes your ad, and suddenly, you're sold like a cheap car on Craigslist. So much for self-empowerment and feminism. I don't have any clothes I consider slutty, but I find out that it doesn't matter. They'll treat you the same. And all the sexual trauma awakens, rushes down my spine, and keeps my body stiffened like I am in electrotherapy. Breathing through my teeth, the greedy sensations, the foul smells, the taste stuck in the back of my throat that I will be washing away with soap in the bathroom later. And the best part? I can't stop. This is what I was made for. And it all crescendos the day Bob becomes my client and takes me home. "It's been a while," he says. I tell him to shut up. My voice has grown up. "What?" he says anyway. And I tell him that I don't want him to make me remember. "All right," he answers. Over the next many years, I willingly see Bob. Bob becomes my client, and I become his. Sometimes he makes me dress up as Kyle in his old clothes, all of which I know by heart. And sometimes he tears up and asks me to just sit with him and hold his hand. I don't know which makes him feel more ill. When I fuck with Bob, I make sure to make him feel loved and seen and heard. I do everything that he wants me to do. It is like I am his doll. This is a punishment for both of us. I think, fittingly. My life has turned into our life. We are one side of the same coin, the victim and the perpetrator. He buys me things and asks me out too. We lie in bed after fucking, and I let him cook breakfast for me in the morning. By the time Bob is in his late 60s, we are in a loving relationship, and I no longer have ties with my family. And by loving, I mean I hate every single inch of your skin, but I will tolerate you until it's time. Because one day he will die by my hands too. He frequently talks about marrying me. A discreet marriage, of course, not because I am the childhood friend of his dead son and much younger, but because I am a trans girl. His colleagues, of course, can't know. I don't reject him, but I appear reluctant. I don't want him to know that I want the marriage to happen too. So, by the time we are officially and discreetly married, I am ready to finalize our time together. Serving by serving, I put a little bit of rat poison in his drinks. He falls ill, pale as a white sheet, and wet with heavy beads of sweat. His lips are bluish. He throws up a lot. I keep it going, serving him just enough to keep him ill for extended periods and drag it out, but make sure there are periods when his health is better and he can return to work to avoid suspicion. It is a slow process, but this is what I have waited for. I realize that I do not find joy in seeing him die slowly, but there is something else that makes it worth it. Like the tense pause between the end of a performance and a standing ovation. He coughs, gets slimy. He is the most disgusting he has ever been, and I have seen the worst of him. He wants sex, and I pretend to pity him when I say no. I simply cannot. I know the torture has to end when he is bedridden for several weeks. The workplace keeps calling, and he is coughing up blood. I have to give him a proper dose and end the misery. Despite how every nerve in my body tells me to extend and keep pushing, to keep seeing how far I can make him go, I know that it has to end. The fat doll, which I have placed on a bookcase next to his bed, stares at us as I sit next to him and give him his final dose of arsenic. "I am scared," he says. "Don't you think you should call the doctor?" I open his hand and run my finger in circles on his rough palm. "No, I don't think I will." With caution, I proceed to remind him that a real man owns his illness and doesn't succumb to it. A man's illness is his and only his problem, and if he makes it anyone else's, well, then he is no better than said illness. Bob's teary eyes look at me for help. "I want you to know, before you pass, that it was me. All those years ago, with Kyle, I arranged for someone to get hurt that night." He blinks and his gaze flickers around as if he is tracking a fly darting the room. "What do you mean with Kyle?" His old voice is so much more fragile, like a whimper, than I expected. He sounds almost innocent. "I mean that I killed your son," I say, and he reluctantly laughs in an uncomfortable smile. "It was supposed to be you, for raping me and for raping Kyle. For everything you did to us, you disgusting pig. I can feel my voice and hand tremble as I recollect my memory. All of what has been boiled up, unsaid. No words have enough color or edge to give life to that. Yet I want him to believe what I say. And it appears he is fumbling, beginning to see a picture he never even considered. Remember how eager I was for you to come and pick us up at the nightclub? How I planned it for months. And those 3 men who got away, I paid them for years' worth of work salary. Oh yeah, I messed up with that. It wasn't supposed to be Kyle. I suddenly find myself choking up before realizing my cheeks are already wet with tears. He was my friend. I didn't even want anyone dead. I just wanted you to hurt. I cry, gasping. I needed you to feel so hurt. Please, why did you do it? I ask. Through my blurred vision, I see his face distorted, too, in a sad frown with ugly tears and snot running down his face. It feels like I am looking at the real Bob, caught in shame and self-pity, and I can't tell if he is crying for me, for himself, or for both of us. I stop myself from squeezing his hand and let go. He eyes the empty cup of arsenic at his bedside. How long? He asks. No, I think. This is not about you, Bob. But he thinks so. In the exhausted breath of a loser, I sigh and stand up. I no longer look at him. I'm staring at my doll. Bob is not healthy enough to get up himself and call for help. Call for anything. He may live for another hour, maybe for another day. Nobody stops by for him anymore. As I leave Bob to die alone in excruciating pain, I am comfortable knowing that I will be somewhere else, and that when his neck tightens and he angles his head to scan the room for help, he will find himself in just the right position to lock eyes with the faceless doll I leave behind. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to Phictive Euphoria. I'd like to take a moment and thank the rest of the members of BackToAshes. Thank you all so much for your dedicated support and waiting patiently for some fresh new content to devour. As I always like to say, without you, I wouldn't have a voice and this channel wouldn't exist, and I would be sitting here talking to myself. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these collections. Until next time, please take care of yourselves and stay vigilant. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.